I frequently work with the senior management teams of large organisations, and I am frequently bemused, or certainly amused, by some of the conversations these grown-ups have with each other. They have, for example, discussions on the extent to which one should prepare in advance of attending or participating in a meeting. That meetings should have agendas. That if there is nothing to meet about, maybe we shouldn't have a meeting. And that if you're going to go to a meeting, you should turn up on time. Indeed, I actually sat through a discussion recently where an argument raged. It wasn't a discussion, it was an argument as to what constitutes being late for a meeting. I had to stop them. I stopped them and they eventually saw the funny side of it. I had to stop them because basically being late means not being on time. There isn't some scientific definition of being late. Now think of some of the things that I've just said, like if I have to go for a meeting I should prepare before I go to the meeting. That is blindingly obvious, and yet senior management teams debate these things as if they have suddenly been struck by lightning on the road to Damascus with a revelation of how they might improve their personal effectiveness. 2-year-olds would know that if I have to go and meet somebody, I should be prepared for what is going to actually take place. They don't think about it that way, they just instinctively know, because a 2-year-old is present, a 2-year-old is mindful. A 2-year-old, as we know, if you have a 2-year-old or had a 2-year-old at some stage, a 2-year-old is like a sponge, simply taking in everything that is going on. A 2-year-old has what us adults crave. A 2-year-old has presence. Now, if a 2-year-old or a 6-year-old or even an 8-year-old for that matter has presence, and somebody of 32 or 38 or 40 is having difficulty deciding whether or not he is late for a meeting by virtue of some strange parallel universe discussion, surely we should strive to be more childlike than fall into the rut in which us adults tend to live. I'm not talking about being childish, I'm talking about being childlike. The more one engrosses oneself in what one is actually doing, in the same way as a 3-year-old sitting in front of a television will be totally engrossed in the experience. The more we do that, the more we develop our ability to be focused in the moment, to pay attention in the moment, to be mindful in the moment, and therefore be more present in the moment. The universities of Milan and California, and indeed Chicago, believe that if we could just be a tiny bit more present, we would be many times more effective. Now that, to you and me, makes absolutely abundant, ordinary common sense. You don't need to have a PhD in psychology or quantum physics to figure that one out. And yet, as ordinary adults, we deliberately leave our minds idling on automatic pilot. And I'm not talking about the automatic pilot that I discussed in last week's video. I'm talking about the ordinary automatic pilot that is run by our stored knowledge. We ordinary adults tend to leave our mind running on automatic pilot, when if we stop to think about it for a moment, it would become blindingly obvious. If we got a little more involved in our own lives, we'd be a lot more effective. And that's my challenge to you today. Could you become a little more involved in your own life? Do you think it might be worth it? Do you think it is something that you might consider doing before you don't have the option? Because our time on this planet is limited. And if we go through our lives not getting involved in our own life, then we're not going to get much out of it. So, are you up to that challenge?